evening, and welcome to the Ombudsman program. My name is Diane Welborn. I am the Ombudsman, and tonight we're going to do something a little bit different with this program. Normally, we are interviewing representatives of government agencies so that the viewers can meet them and call in with their questions. But because this is the 50th anniversary year of the Ombudsman's office, I have invited a colleague of mine to come on the program this evening, and we are going to talk about the Ombudsman's office and its history, its concept, and the kind of work that we do. So this is going to be a little bit different this evening, and I want to welcome and introduce to the viewers Kim Bramledge, who works as the manager of marketing and communication for Five Rivers Health Center. Welcome, Kim. Thank you for joining.
No problem. I am happy to be here. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to let you take it away and we'll just get started with all the background of the Ombudsman's office. Thank you.
Yes. So let's start out, Diane. Would you please tell the viewers about the origins of the Ombudsman and in particular, the Dayton and Montgomery County Ombudsman Office?
Yes, I would love to do that. The word ombudsman is not yet a household word. We're still working on that, but it is a Swedish word, which means a representative of the people. And the first ombudsman was appointed in Sweden in 1809, and his name was Lars August Mannerheim. And so the concept of ombudsman has been around for hundreds of years. The concept rather quickly spread across Europe. So most European nations have a federal level or national ombudsman, as well as many municipalities having ombudsman. Then the concept began to spread actually around the world. And finally, in the 1960s, it appeared in the United States for the first time. The first ombudsman's office was in Hawaii. And I always think that that's somewhat humorous because we think of Hawaii as a paradise and as a vacation spot. You don't think of people needing to have problems resolved in Hawaii. We go away there to forget all of our problems. But that was the first ombudsman's office and was followed rather quickly by the state of Nebraska, which was very interesting. It's not a very populous state out there, but their legislature decided that they needed to have an ombudsman as well. And then, believe it or not, here came Dayton, Ohio in 1971 with one of the oldest ombudsman's offices in the United States. And that I think that's pretty exciting, and I don't think a lot of people really know how far back we go in the history of Dayton. I did not live in Dayton in the 70s, so I can't really speak to all of the reasons that gave rise to the need for an ombudsman's office, but I can say that this was on the tail end of the Vietnam War. So we had demonstrations happening across the country. It was also the women's liberation movement, so we had that going on, and then also we had court-ordered busing to achieve racial integration, which actually we're still working on today. But in any event, those are just some of the settings that were going on in the community in Dayton when the idea of the Ombudsman's office reached there. Interestingly, it was brought to the front in Dayton by a political science professor at Sinclair, and also by a former city manager of the city of Dayton. And so those two spoke with the Montgomery County commissioners, their city of Dayton commissioners, and also the members of the Dayton Public School Board. And those three political jurisdictions decided to come together and establish an ombudsman's office. So it has really unusual roots in that regard as well, because while all ombudsmen are appointed by elected officials, my office is the only one that I'm aware of around the world that has three different jurisdictions that came together to support the office. So political officials remain my board of directors to this day. There's always been 9 members, 3 from each of the political jurisdictions. And as someone is not reelected or chooses to retire, the next person elected into that position, if it's a county commissioner, they automatically come on because there's 3 of those. But then with the city and the school board, they have a process of choosing which boards and committees across their areas they're going to serve on. So that can also change. But that is our we're one of the oldest ones in the country, and we have remained with these 3 jurisdictions ever since. Those jurisdictions also provided us with our mandate, which I'll talk a little bit now. Overall, the mandate of the office is to investigate and resolve complaints about government agencies. And that's just simply stated. But our founders gave us a little bit more specifics to do with that. The first is to provide investigative services of administrative acts of government agencies, but we are prohibited from investigating elected officials. So while I have had that request over the years, I always have to turn that down. We are also prohibited from investigating the judiciary because all of those entities are elected. And the logic behind that is that if the citizens don't want them, they will vote them out of office. So we were also given a second mandate to provide public service to help individuals getting fair treatment from government agencies. So we will I'll come back and talk a little bit more about our cases as the program goes on, but that's a very important role to us, the fairness and the transparency with which people who interact with government are treated. We are an impartial agency for investigating citizen complaints, and we were also tasked with working to improve citizen confidence in local government. And I can come back later and say a little bit more about how we do that. And we also, not last, but moving on to that, where we were requested to generate public information through the media, which will lead to a better community understanding of government processes and urban dilemmas. And so in order to achieve that mandate, that's one of the reasons we have welcomed and have had a long history with DATV in presenting things to the public. Same reason why I write the column for the Dayton Daily News once a week to let people know what we're about. And then finally, and certainly not the least, we are tasked with providing an opportunity for constructive public service by volunteers. I actually love this one. I love the fact that that's in our mandate because we do welcome volunteers. We always have a number of volunteers that want to help us doing various things. Many like to do background research into the policies and procedures of the government agencies that we are investigating and taking complaints about. So we always have some volunteers around, and we're always welcoming more. But I think I'll just, in the very beginning, when the office opened in 1971, it was a one-person office, as many ombudsman offices are when they first start out. but the first ombudsman had a fleet of volunteers to help answer all those phone calls.
Oh.
And the phone answering in those days, believe it or not, was done by the Junior League. The Junior League of Dayton volunteered to help us with that. So we have some interesting photos of that in our office. I'd like to add that we have a long-term care division too, but I think we're going to come back and talk about that so I can describe what they do and how we have two different divisions that are doing similar type of work within the same office.
Okay.
So thank you.
It sounds like you have a really unique and complicated mission, really. I mean, you're doing so many more things than I'm sure I or the average viewer might even be aware of. So that's very interesting. So where was the office originally established? Who were the original founding funders of this office?
The first actual ombudsman office was in a little house on Jefferson Street, which no longer exists. That was torn down to make room for progress. But then shortly after that, we had offices in the Center City building. And you may know that one that's right in the middle of downtown Dayton. It's at 3rd and Main Streets. And we were there for many, many years until 2012. And now we've moved over to 11 West Monument Avenue, which is commonly known as the Bierman Building, because it used to be the Bierman Real Estate Company. So that's where we're located now. In the early days, it was a struggle for funding. They went ahead and opened their doors on faith and hoping to get that together. But the the Kettering Foundation was one of our early funders because of their focus on promoting citizen involvement and advocating for democracy. Many are of the mindset that an ombudsman really can't exist outside of a democratic society. So that's more of a philosophical kind of point. But we also had funding that came from the former model cities acts across the United States. So that was around in the 70s, I think into the early 80s. But then basically the 3 jurisdictions, the county and the city of Dayton and the Dayton Public School Board, picked up the funding for our office when those other initial funders stopped, and then they have continued to support the office since that time. So,
okay, all right. So tell us about the individuals who have served as ombudsman over the years prior to you.
Right, thank you. I look forward to talking about my predecessors. The very first ombudsman in the Dayton office was a man that was an editor of local newspaper, and his name was Ted Bingham. It's not unusual that ombudsmen come from the profession of journalism. As you might understand, they also have a knack for research. They want to get to the truth. They want to get to the bottom of the story. So in a number of offices across the US and around the world, there are people who have had prior careers as journalists. Following Ted Bingham, and he had a very short tenure. Unfortunately, in the 70s, he passed away of a heart attack. So he made a big mark on the office, but on a very, very short time. After Ted Bingham came Bonnie McCauley. And she had a political background. She had been an elected official, and she actually stayed in the post of ombudsman for 18 years. So she was ombudsman for a long time. And she was very instrumental in taking our office into the world of joining and working with professional associations of ombudsmen, both in the United States and around the world. Then also after Bonnie came Marie Ferguson. whose history before coming to the Ombudsman's office, she had been an administrator at the Dayton Art Institute. So she had been an arts administrator. And then I was hired by Marie Ferguson to be an assistant ombudsman. And then when she retired, I became the ombudsman and have enjoyed my time doing this work.
And when did you become the actual ombudsman? When
1999.
1999. Okay.
Yes, so I've been at this for some time now, but
yes,
yes.
You and Bonnie.
Yes,
Bonnie.
me and Bonnie had the longest tenure there, but it's, as I said, it's not uncommon to have people in the ombudsman position who are from some of the various professions that I have mentioned. And of course, we also have attorneys who are appointed as ombudsman. We haven't had that in the Dayton area, but we certainly have volunteers who are retired attorneys who really just don't want to play golf all the time, but they want to do some public service as well. So we're very fortunate to have that help.
Excellent, excellent. So how are ombudsmen usually chosen for the position?
Yes, they are always appointed by a legislative body around the world. That's one of the standards that happens everywhere. It's more or less complicated depending upon the legislative bodies, because if one has to be approved by a House and a Senate, there can be arguments about that. There are a lot of candidates that can come through, but in the case of Dayton, they have used the hiring process of the Montgomery County offices, and then to have interviews and to go through the initial exploration of who is applying for ombudsman, to check their backgrounds. You have to take a test and some things like that. And then ultimately it is the 9-member board who makes the decision and makes the appointment. So that's pretty much how it is around the world. And some ombudsmen have a set tenure in that they can only serve, for example, 5 years with one 5-year renewal, and then they are completely done. Others do not have that tenure and can stay in the office longer, but probably most internationally and around the world do have a set tenure that of some length, 5, 10, maybe even 12 years. The idea is that the person has enough time in the position to make an impact. And that it is not a position that is every time a political change is made in a country that they're going to run around and change the ombudsman as well, so that it can the office of ombudsman can remain more stable over time. So that's how they that's the logic behind that.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I would think that the state, local, national, or depending on the specific jurisdiction, they would have different needs or different situations why that tenure would be in place.
Right, right, exactly.
Okay, so can you describe a little bit about the expansion of the office?
Yes, we haven't done a huge amount of expansion, but in the late 1970s, Ohio took up the ombudsman program for the long-term care residents, as did states across the country. Excuse me. There's an ombudsman for long-term care advocacy in every state in the union. So every state has a long-term care ombudsman. And when they decided that in Ohio, and they went looking for, they broke the long-term care ombudsman program into regional offices. Those are contiguous with the area agencies on aging. So So we have a long-term care ombudsman that's been in our office since the late 70s, and their work is different than the government investigations. Excuse me. They are very specialized in that they advocate for residents of nursing homes, and they use the residents' Bill of Rights with which to do that. So that's their work. So they are visiting nursing homes, taking complaints from residents, taking calls from their family members about any complaints they may have about their care. Okay. And so there's a lot of different issues that come to the long-term care ombudsman, as you might imagine. Mm-hmm. But one of the differences is that they are known as an advocate ombudsman, whereas the office that does the government complaints is not an advocate office. Okay. Excuse me. When a citizen comes to us with a complaint, we don't automatically take their side and go to advocate for them. First, we have to investigate and see if they are eligible for the benefit that they're complaining to us about that they didn't get. And so once we investigate and learn the situation, we may be advocating for the citizen after we've done the investigation, or we may be telling the citizen, I'm sorry, but the government decision that you received in the mail is correct. And this is what you would have to do to go change it. Okay. So it's very different, where the long-term care ombudsman is advocate ombudsman are always advocating for the resident. The resident directs their work and what kind of resolution they're going to find acceptable to them, and so that's the difference between the two. But we coexist happily in one office, even though we have two different styles of ombudsman work. Mm-hmm. There's been an expansion within that program as well to include the My Care program, which some of our viewers may know about and some may not have heard about. The state of Ohio has decided in many counties, particularly the more urban counties like Montgomery County, to combine those that are receiving both Medicare and Medicaid into a managed care program called My Care. And so we also now take complaints about that as well, whereas that did not exist originally. They were really just going into nursing homes. But, for My Care participants, if, for example, they're not getting the number of hours of care in their home that they need, then they may have to go to a nursing home, which is much more expensive than providing care at home. So that is the benefit to them of having a My Care and managed care program. So that's pretty well, here to stay, I think, in Ohio now with that. But we will also take complaints about that program when something goes wrong with the managed care. So the complaints in the nursing homes are very, very widely. And as you might be able to understand, with COVID, it's been extremely difficult because people were not allowed to visit nursing homes. So during the time of COVID, we have had to shift gears and develop new ways of working with those residents that I think are here to stay for the future. I think many are improvements. One thing was we were not using much technology with long-term care residents before COVID because they didn't have a lot of that available to them. Mainly it's just the telephone, and then we would go and we would see them and talk to them face to face. But since we were unable to go in and visit them face to face, we worked hard to help the nursing homes get the technology that would enable us to communicate through FaceTime or whatever, Zoom or whatever other types of communications that we could. And of course, family members of the residents felt the same way. That has been an enormous frustration by family members with the complaints during COVID. It's been very painful for many of them because many used to go into the facilities and actually help feed their loved ones and visit every day. And you can imagine how worried they were and how upset they were when they were no longer allowed to go in, really for the protection of the residents. However, the family members feel like they can protect their residents in there as well. So that's been a big source of complaints, and now it is one that is a source of compassionate care visit requests that are coming to our office, and that's what we're trying to help facilities and families organize, those compassionate care visits. But the visits can range from everything from, unfortunately, abuse or neglect within a facility, all the way to, the food here is terrible and it's served cold when it should be warm, or, it's lukewarm when it should be warm, so. Yeah. Because it's very important, the diet that people, have in a nursing home, and all of us are particular about what we want to eat and what we like to eat. So that personal choice makes a big difference to all the residents.
Definitely. Would you like to answer a question, Al, before we go on to my next question?
Sure.
The question came in from one of the viewers that says, can the Dayton Ombudsman Office help someone with problems involving a federal office such as Social Security?
Well, I thank the viewer for that excellent question, because it gives me the opportunity to say a little bit more too about jurisdictional issues. The short answer is yes. People can call us about Social Security. They have been for years, but our number of calls regarding Social Security is on the increase. I think part of that is because our demographic is changing. Our area in Montgomery, Ohio, is getting older. And so more and more people are coming in contact with Social Security that had not before.
Sure.
So that, I think that's one reason that complaints are up. And then COVID has had an impact on, a lot of government agencies. Very challenging to maintain provision of those essential services when we used to be a world of cubicles, and now cubicles are dangerous. So you had to have people working in shifts and rotating around, and that has its impact as well on how quickly, maybe things can get done. Also, just want to say that when our founders established us, they gave us a very deep jurisdiction. Meaning that they didn't limit what government agencies we could take complaints about. So we do take complaints about anything that is within Montgomery County, any of our municipalities, of which we have many, all of our townships, which we do have those as well still, and then also state and federal agencies. So we do take complaints about those other agencies, and we can help people with those complaints as well.
Excellent. Well, it actually is a great segue, because my next question was going to be to tell us about the types of inquiries which come into the office.
Well, it is one of those places that it's never a dull moment, because one never knows what the next email or the next phone call or the next, people still write us through regular U.S. mail, snail mail. So you never know the next letter you're going to open or what it's going to be. And so that there's always variety in the work that the staff and that the volunteers and our interns and others have the opportunity to do. So we do get more complaints, of course, about the Montgomery County agencies. That's not to say that they are less well run than others. It's just that they are serving a large part of the population. Just like Social Security. I mean, Social Security touches all of us. And maybe more so when we reach retirement ages and with Medicare as well. But still, even young people are receiving sometimes Social Security benefits or survivors benefits, or need to have clarification about their annual earnings. I mean, there's just, even young people all have questions about all those agencies. So we get complaints, all types of complaints, things that surprise us all the time. we and many people do not understand which part of government is responsible for what. And that's understandable. It's really understandable because government is complex, and citizens just don't know what the Department of Commerce is responsible for versus what the Attorney General's office is responsible for, and what the legal departments of the various municipalities do. And of course, there's so many benefits that are run through many agencies, such as the very large SNAP or food stamp program. That probably touches a fifth of the people that live in Montgomery County. So when you have that large number of population that is using a particular program, and for many depending upon it, it's something is really gone wrong when something happens to their benefits through that program. There are also a lot of programs with transportation, where people really need transportation that's provided by government, and so that is, where we come in to take those kinds of things. The categories, I think, have changed somewhat over the years. When I've read the original annual reports, there was a lot of complaints about roving packs of dogs in our county, because we didn't really have the emphasis on, an animal shelter. We didn't have as many laws. We didn't have, a dog catcher. And so that was a lot of work in the early days of the Ombudsman's office, believe it or not. I mean, today that's not the number one
not
issue.
The focus of what you're doing.
It does not come to us. Although, yes, there are problems with dogs, all animals. There's problems with animals, but it's not the largest source of complaints anymore.
Okay.
Yes. So our statistics really kind of look like a smattering of all over the federal, state, and local agencies. But all of the complaints that we do are for residents of Montgomery County.
Okay.
And that's something that is hard for a lot of people to understand that live in our neighboring counties, because they are hoping that we will be able to do for them, but we're not funded by any of them, and they're not really in our general mandate. The other thing I find interesting is people's expectations, because of the longevity of the office in Montgomery County, and many people have used the office over the years. It's touched a lot, that we get calls fairly regularly, from someone whose son or daughter has moved to St. Louis or moved to California or moved somewhere else, and they're calling to say, how does she or he reach the ombudsman there? And we have to tell them, I'm sorry, not every jurisdiction has done what Montgomery County, City of Dayton, and the Dayton Board of Education have done for their citizens. So anyway, that's
yes. So you talked about many of the different agencies, and we have another caller that had a question about whether or not your office can resolve problems with the U.S. Post Office or Postal Service.
Yes, we do. It's a federal agency, and anything that is funded by government, we can take a complaint about it. So yes, we take
Excellent.
complaints about those as well.
Okay.
And so back to the expansion a bit. Um, Earlier, many government entities started to sort of outsource some of the traditional responsibilities that they had. So we follow the money. If it's paid for by taxpayers, then we will go after it and resolve a complaint or investigate a complaint about that. So more and more we have seen that as there are various licensing things, but if taxpayers are behind it and ultimately it's public money in that, then we will take a complaint about that.
Okay.
So I also wanted to mention we have a very large category of what we call information and referral. It could also be explained to the viewers as it's brief assistance. And
Okay.
I was touching on that when I mentioned about people not knowing exactly which part of government to go to. Well, we do. And so people can call us and we can help them figure out where they need to be. And then we give them that information. And then they're often running to go to that agency and get their own information or get their complaint resolved. We always invite them to come back to us if it doesn't get fixed, and they can. But it's nice to let people be empowered to try and to just get the name and the contact information that they can have for themselves.
Excellent.
Then we get a lot of calls, and we have traditionally over the years. Again, this relates back to people just not knowing who to call. And then we would call miscellaneous kind of category. And a couple of those are consumer complaints, because consumer complaints are usually, they're in the private realm. Yes, we have consumer protection laws in some areas and stronger ones in some than the other, but that's really in the private arena, the consumer complaints. The purchase that doesn't go as the person felt is not one a complaint that we don't have the jurisdiction to go handle that.
Sure.
Another one that we get a lot of complaints about is employment. People that are dissatisfied with some relationship about employment. And so there is the Department of Labor. And again, we do have laws, but not every aspect of employment is so strictly legislated. And yes, people can be dismissed. And so it happens, unfortunately. So, and then finally, another large category are complaints that people have about their landlords or about their tenants. It goes both ways. And again, that's in the private realm. There are rules and there are laws, but it's a matter of a contract, or it's a matter of a word of mouth, between two people to implement that. So we really don't get into all of that, but we get a lot of calls and we give a lot of information to people, because I wish that there were a class that everyone in high school could take, because everybody rents at some point in their life, and many people don't quite realize exactly what they're getting into when they sign the lease, and what they need, what they're going to need to do to get out of it if they change their mind or want to go somewhere else.
Right.
So,
and what their rights are.
Exactly.
Right.
What their rights are in that relationship as well.
How does the ombudsman actually do the work? How do you do the work that you do?
Sure. Well, initially, we will receive the complaint either through the website or through email or through a phone call or a letter, and we'll first take a look at it to see is it something that's in our jurisdiction, and if it's not, then it becomes one of those referral responses. So we tell them, we don't do this, but this is who can help you. At least we hope they can. But if it is something that is in our jurisdiction, then we always begin by investigating the policies and procedures about that particular matter, what that thing is. And if if there is documentation that the person has, if they've received a letter, then we're going to want to see that, so that we can read that and understand. We've had a lot of calls from people who initially call us in tears because letters from some of our agencies, such as the IRS, are not real clear. They're not written in the type of language that most people speak. So sometimes we find ourselves explaining governmental jargon to people and explaining, this is what you are being asked to do, or this is what you're being told what is wrong in this letter. So we do provide interpretation services for government as well. So sometimes that has to happen in the course of the complaint. And then our philosophy is to always start at the lowest level of an agency to try to get resolution. We will go to the caseworker, for example, or go to the person that has provided the service to the individual to get their side of the story. And we also want to give them the opportunity to fix it if they can. And sometimes when the caseworkers, the staff of the very agencies tell us, I sent them to the ombudsman's office, I told them to go to you. Well, we know that they can't fix it, that it's not something fixable by a front level staff person. So we do not jump to the director level with every single complaint we do. So we try to start closest to where the problem happened in order to achieve resolution or an explanation, depending upon what our research gives to us. Some cases can be solved in a day, can be resolved in a day, and others, which may involve a lot of accounting or other things that we're going to have to delve into, may take weeks to months. And we have had some of those that it just takes us that long to resolve it. And that, if we had more people, we could do those difficult ones faster, but we're just, we move with what we have.
Indeed. So how is the ombudsman practice different from something called mediation?
That's a great question. Yes, the process of mediation is something that ombudsman might use, but mediation classically is a never-ending impartiality. The mediator does not take the side of either party in a dispute, and so they are a neutral that's there. We start off as a neutral, but then once we do our investigation, if we see and find something that we believe is wrong, we will inform the agency of that. So it's very different from mediation, and mediation definitely has its place. And it's an important function, and it helps people get problems resolved, but it is very different from ombudsman work because of that constant neutrality. They are never taking the side of either party. So we do make referrals, of course, to our local mediation services, and they're very valuable and very important, but it's very different than ombudsman work.
Sure.
Also many government decisions can't be mediated. There's a policy there. It's not just like, okay, if we get together on this, we can come to a handshake and we can get this done. Because in order for government to be fair and equitable, everybody has to be treated the same. Sure. So a lot of things are just not negotiable. If you have more than X amount of income, you're not going to be eligible for food stamps. And that's not, you can't mediate that.
Right.
So, and many other things like that are just not mediated. Child support orders are an order by the court. And, people have to follow court orders. So, again, that's not, you can mediate parenting, shared parenting with children, but whatever the support order is an order.
Yeah,
so that has to be
that's very, very helpful description, actually.
Thank you.
So how is the work of your office different from others that may have the same title of ombudsman?
Right. There's been a proliferation of the word ombudsman. I think a lot of people really think that it's cool. They like to use the term, want to hang out their own shingle, and they're an ombudsman for this or that. And there is an entire association that is ombudsman for the corporate sector. And what they really do is important. It's not ombudsman work like what we do. They're really there as HR people. I mean, they're in the HR business to try to prevent conflicts and lawsuits and things of that nature within corporations. An important function, but very different. Then also there are ombudsmen increasingly on college campuses. And yes, there's an ombudsman at Sinclair for the students of Sinclair. So they are working more within that specific and narrow frame to help the students navigate their way through what to many is the maze of college and universities, and to help when policies about grading and about other student loan practices and other things are in play there with the various students. So those are a couple of ways. But so you see ombudsman, creeping up in a lot of different other places, a lot of titles for that. But I think for the viewers and for the public to remember, it really is important to kind of look at where that entity is within the organization. It's almost like who pays your paycheck, and so whose side are you on? So that's something to just for people to think about, and know that what an ombudsman is going to do for them depends upon whether they're a governmental ombudsman or whether they're operating in the private sector or whether they're operating on a college campus. So
okay. Excellent. So then how does the office fulfill its role? You talked earlier about bringing information to the public and making sure that you're informing the public about what you do.
Right. And in addition to the weekly column, for which we are very thankful to the Dayton Daily News and to Ted Bingham, who established it, because as a newspaper editor, naturally for him, the column was a very important thing to use the vehicle of the newspaper. And he used to entitle, now it's called the Ombudsman column, which is good. It used to be called in the old days, our phone number, 223-4613, which is still our number today. We've had the same telephone number since 1971. I think that's why so many people can still find us. But so in addition to the column, and of course the DATV program we're doing now, we produce annual reports, which are available on the website. And I participate on a lot of community boards and task forces, which gives us the opportunity to inform particularly other professionals in our community about what we can do for people. I'll just use one example is, also the homeless solutions process. A lot of people who are homeless have problems with government entities. IDs get lost. They have to figure out how to recreate that. There are other problems that they may have had. And so an ombudsman can step in, and we're quite accustomed to helping people find their way out of those seemingly catch-22s when fingers are being pointed. No, you go to this agency. No, you go to this agency first. We can break it down and give them factual, information like that. And
Mhm.
then I guess one other way that I initiated a number of years ago is that I produce a weekly update, because annual reports, you're talking about a whole year there, and it's a lot of statistics, and every agency does some kind of annual report. But I like to send out an update every Friday that goes to the elected officials from all jurisdictions that touch Montgomery County. So it goes to a lot of people,
Mhm.
and all elected officials, and to many of our colleagues, that highlights what we did that week, what cases we have opened, what cases have been opened in long-term care, any particular resolution, sort of like a shorter version of the column. It's just a short example of somebody that we were able to assist during that week. So that weekly update goes out to as many people as will accept it. So,
Mhm.
and
Well,
that,
I get it, and
yeah,
I value that information.
well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Yes, it keeps people more updated on a regular basis about the kind of issues that are coming to our office and the kinds of things that we're doing. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So you mentioned briefly, but if you would tell us a little more in the few minutes we have left, how has the pandemic really affected your office? Are there changes that will become permanent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will be. I think that one of the improvements for us is the working remotely. It was quite a scurry in the beginning. It didn't work well in the beginning. All of our systems kind of had band-aids on them, and they all
Mhm.
started popping off.
Ah.
So that was a problem. But now that we've worked that out, I think there are most definitely, excuse me, efficiencies in working from home, such as travel time. You don't have to spend as much time moving from meetings to meetings to meetings. And so there's an efficiency in doing that. And I think, just frankly, some people work better at home without the interruptions that sometimes take place in an office environment,
Mhm.
that kind of conference room stuff or water
Mhm.
cooler, type stuff. So I think we have a number of staff that like it very much and are very productive in working this way. In long-term care, I mentioned that there's more electronic communications with our residents, and I don't think that's going to go away either.
Mhm. Indeed. So do you have some concluding remarks talking about a little bit about the future, gifts by elected officials, anything else you want to wrap up with?
Yes, thank you, Kim. I really would. I I speak of the Ombudsman's office as a true gift by the elected officials
Mhm.
to the people of Montgomery County, because they don't have to do it. They don't have to fund it. It takes political will to fund an organization whose mission it is to investigate and resolve complaints about your very own agencies that are
Mhm.
a part of your county or your city or your school board, or if you're elected at a higher level, those as well. So I think that while citizens do appreciate that, it's not something that's available to all people across our country. It's very unique, and it is a gift to the citizens. Um, we are strong for the future because of all of the work we had to do to keep moving during COVID, and have a fantastic staff that are caring and are also very sharp, and have amassed a lot of information
Mhm.
about government agencies and long-term care facilities and how to navigate the systems on behalf of citizens. So we're very, very grateful for all of that. Thank you,
Excellent.
Kim.
Excellent. I've learned so much, as I'm sure our viewers have. Yes.
Well, thank you very, very much for coming on the program and doing such a great interview. And I
No
appreciate
problem.
that. And I think we'll say goodbye to the viewers now. And if you have a problem, or if somebody's talking to you about the problem that they have, don't forget that you can call your ombudsman's office and we'll help you sort through that and probably even resolve it.
Excellent.
So thank you very much. And thanks to the viewers for watching. Goodbye.